Hi folks, welcome to the countdown to kick-off as Celtic gets set to get back to action after the international break. We've got Hearts at Celtic Park on Saturday at 3 o'clock. Joined for this one by Paddy. Paddy, how are you feeling about getting back to it after the break?
Yeah, just really excited just to get back to domestic football again. I think it's felt that little bit longer. I heard the guys on Super Scoreboard talking about you've had the Euros this summer, and we've obviously all been watching that, and then had a fulfilment of international football. You get 4 games into the start of the season and it's back again, and actually not too far away again in October. So we've spoke about players playing too much, and yeah, I don't think these friendlies or Nation League games really help that too as well. But back to the real stuff tomorrow, and really looking forward to it.
You were saying guys don't get much of a break. One guy that did get his break was Callum McGregor. You might have seen he also picked up Player of the Month for August.
Yeah.
In Callum McGregor's time at Celtic, however long he's been with us for now, how many times has he picked up a Player of the Month award?
I know the answer.
Well, give us it.
One.
Can you believe that?
Wild.
That just doesn't make any sense.
I think then when you kind of look at it, it doesn't make any sense, but you think about the amount of times you've been having a conversation about Callum McGregor with your friends after a game, and you've probably come away with the line, "Oh, I am McGregor. How good was McGregor?" I bet he does it every week. He does it every week. We're all so used to it. We're all so used to the performances that it's like expected that he's playing at that high level, and you only really notice when he has a bad game.
I know what you mean. He's got that kind of consistent 7, 8 out of 10 thing, and sometimes it's maybe the headline grabbers that go and get the awards, the Kyogos, the Adam Edas, the guys, the Matt O'Reillys, for example. So if you're saying it's justified, then he's only due.
No, it's certainly not.
Fair enough. So he'll be in good form. He's obviously in good goal scoring form. He's got 3 in the 4 games so far. We'll get to the team just shortly, but there's absolutely no doubt he is one of, if not the first name in the team sheet, regardless who else has come in. Talking about the international stuff, and you're absolutely right, there's another break in October around about the same time, maybe 12th or 13th of October. But there's 6 Celtic games between now and then, 2 of which are Champions League games, and it does give you a chance to pick up that bit of momentum again and just get into all the good stuff that we were seeing before the break.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as Celtic fans, we were super impressed with what we've seen in pre-season. There was a real, there was a proper identity on the park in terms of how we were setting up, in terms of how we were playing. There has been tweaks to the system from what we played last season. I do think that we are really kind of cutting off the oxygen in other teams and trying to press them into their own box a lot more. And that's given the likes of Callum McGregor that space at the edge of the box to go and put them away the way he has been. Do we continue that into this game on Wednesday against Slovan? I know we're on to talk about Hearts today, but it's the questions that are going to get asked, especially when it comes to the lineup. It's
very relevant, and I think Brendan Rodgers will always tell you that the next game is the most important, and he's right about that. But he's not doing his job right if he's not considering what's after the next game, because there's a lot to weigh up there. There's so much talk about the free-flowing football, the very enjoyable football. People saying it's every bit as good as some of the stuff we've seen during Ange's time there. In the 5 games Celtic have played so far, 4 league games, 1 League Cup game, I think we've scored 15 goals and conceded just 2.
Yeah.
In the league, we've conceded 0. And I need to check the stat, but it's been doing the rounds somewhere that if we keep a clean sheet against Hearts, it's the first time since 1900-something that Celtic have kept 5 clean sheets in their first 5 league games. Doesn't matter what time of Celtic's history you're looking at or whatever, that is a phenomenal record to be targeting.
The way football's obviously advanced in those years as well, it's incredible. I think it was kind of summed up when we seen the late saves from Kasper Schmeichel in the last game, and I think it was Ian Crocker was saying some of his first saves in Scottish football. I think you still need to be switched on at that level, and you need to be switched on for 90 minutes. His distribution has obviously been a big part of his game as well, but it's an all-firing centre-half pairing, and it's an all-firing wing-back pairing as well. I definitely think that the guys have got off to a flyer, and yeah, you rightly said in the weekly show on Monday, it's going to be very difficult for these new guys to come in and expect a jersey in this team. I think everyone's going to be up for the fight.
And here's a question then, given the stat that I've just rhymed off, how can you change your back four?
Because, well, for me, I still think that the evidence is there in terms of what Liam Scales' capabilities are. I think he's a very good defender. I don't think going forward he has the answer for what we want to do as a team. But but at this point I still think it's his jersey. I do have and I'm sure, I know we're going to come on to it, I do have a little suspicion that he might get dropped tomorrow.
I've got the very same suspicion, so don't feel bad about it, but I think at the moment, particularly given what we've seen in the Rangers game, Celtic were excellent, 3-0 win, very comfortable 3-0 win, and looking good for it. And I think based on that game, Scales stood up, Greg Taylor stood up, Paulo Bernardo really stood up, and Kyogo, as he always does against Rangers, done his job. But all four of them are under pressure. Adam Ida wants to start. Arne Engels and Luke McCowan want to play in that midfield. You better believe Trusty is here to play games of football at £6 million signing, and we know that Alex Valle isn't here on loan to sit on another bench. He sat on benches for Barcelona. He wants to start games for Celtic. So with Wednesday in mind, we take on, as most folk will know, Slovan Bratilava, Matchday 1 Champions League. Home game, huge opportunity to get points on the board. That's, without knowing a huge deal about Slovan, this has got to be one that Celtic really target getting off to a flyer against. With that in mind then, what does he do? Do you start with the tried and tested, the guys that have got you here so far, and then have to pitch in your guys for their first starts in Europe? Or do you start some of them? Do you bring them off the bench? What do you do? What's your solution?
First and foremost, I think we know this. We look at Hearts, they're in a pretty bad place at the moment, and I think a lot of us as fans are expecting the victory tomorrow. I think Celtic will go for it. I think we'll try and score a few against them, but we also need to respect the fact that less than a year ago they beat us at Celtic Park. So I still think that we just need to be on our toes for that. I don't think he tinkers with the team too much. I think he really needs to make sure that there's still that fluidity and that understanding. But believe me, those 2 weeks on the training ground with Brendan Rodgers will not have done those boys any harm at all. I do think that we speak about, this player's gunning for the jersey, this player's gunning for the jersey. I think we've seen over the last 2 or 3 seasons how important it is to have that rotation within your team as well. Yes, all right, there will be certain starters that are going to be in, week out, if they can keep up with it, which I do think there's plenty in our team that can do so. But I also think that there's plenty of players there that are going to be, just happy with that rotation, happy with that 30 minutes coming off the bench, or happy going off at the hour mark. And I do look at the likes of Kyogo and Ida. I think that they kind of had that understanding last season, especially in the run-in when we needed fresh legs as much as possible. I do think we'll see that. I think our creative positions are definitely coming from our 2 wing backs just now, and how they're linking up with the two wingers in front of them. Mm-hmm. And I do see the likes of Baye and Greg Taylor rotating quite a bit. And actually, I can see Alistair Johnston getting a little bit of a rest eventually as well, especially after hearing that he's pulled up a bit tight with his hamstring. I think that we need to really utilise that now. We've got the depth there. Yeah. And we're actually, as fans, I think a few are still crying out for another winger, including myself. We've got the depth in the middle, we've got the depth at the back, we've got the depth in every single position. And I do think we will need to utilise the full team in order for us to be up at the highest level.
Exactly. Why have the depth and not use it? Yeah. The reason you create depth within your squad is so that you can rest and rotate some guys without seeing a notable drop in quality. And I don't think that's always been an option for Brendan Rodgers over the last 12 months. But I think all of a sudden, based on, I think, a really solid transfer window, eventually, he's got those options to hand. With Alistair Johnston and Greg Taylor, there's, I believe, according to the press conference, ongoing contract talks for both. Alistair Johnston is definitely due an upgrade, an improved deal. I think, I don't know, he'll have ambitions. He's a guy with a real drive about him. I'd love him to be here for a few years. We were having a conversation about who could be the future skipper. Yeah, he's definitely one of those guys for me, and he should be on increased terms, shouldn't he, based on what he's done? Without a doubt, and I think this is a reward for his performances. I think we all kind of seen a bit of a difficult period for him at the beginning of last season. We spoke about that injury, coming back from there, not really having a proper pre-season, and it took him a bit of time to really get into the flow of things. The winger in front of him was changing week in, week out. There wasn't that consistency building. Nicholas couldn't come in, hoping that would be the step forward. It was stop-start for him as well when you look at it, and James Forrest gave him probably the most consistent performances that he could have asked for, and then we actually seen a bit more from Nicholas Kuhn as well come the end of the season. So it has been stop-start. He will have learned so much
about his game because of that as well. They were actually having a bit of a discussion about Alistair Johnson last night again on Super Scoreboard, and Mark Wilson made a very good point in terms of there are a lot of people saying that he's better than Josip Juranovic. I think that we're getting a more of a well-rounded player. I really do. I think Juranovic had some really, really high qualities. But for me, Alistair Johnson is an incredible defender. I think he's very good. I think he's very switched on, and he's quick and he's athletic.
I always think it's important for guys, whatever their position is, Paddy, to first and foremost be good at their core responsibility. Yeah. His first job is to defend. He does it brilliantly. It's almost like he takes it personally when someone comes up against him or tries to score against him. He's got a real bite about him, and I think he's a great defender. But as you also lean towards, he's developing such an exciting partnership with Nicholas Kuhn. They've linked up on several occasions between the pre-season and now the competitive stuff, and created some real great opportunities for Celtic, least of all the opening goal against Rangers, where it's Kuhn, Johnston and Bernardo that link up in that wee triangle after a throw-in. Before you know it, Johnston hits the byline, cuts it back for Maeda, and you're good to go. So I think he's a really exciting player, and I think that needs to be reflected and rewarded. Celtic, amongst other things, done some really good business around about this time last year. It was just after the window had closed, and then, forgive my timings, but I think all of a sudden Kyogo signed a new deal and Maeda. McGregor had already signed his, before that point. Carter Vickers signed a new deal. Matt O'Reilly. I think various guys were signed up. And you sign up your most valuable assets and you protect them so that when Brighton do come calling with 30 million, you can take that kind of price point. And I think Alistair Johnson should certainly be there. Greg Taylor, the suggestions are that he has been offered a new deal. I've heard conflicting stories about whether something concrete had or hadn't been put to him. But hopefully something has been put there. And whether Greg Taylor becomes or remains a starter this season or not, we don't know. I think Baye's been brought to play games. But there's no doubt Rodgers rates him, speaks very positively about him there this afternoon that you might have heard, and he wants him around as part of his first team squad. So the board need to reflect that and get the guy signed up. Yeah. Let's get more pointed though about the Hearts game then. To put you on the spot, what's the back four you would like to see? What back four do you think you'll see?
Back four I would like to see would probably be. Did we get confirmation today about Alistair Johnson?
He's okay. As is Carter Vickers, they both trained.
Okay, so yeah, I would still stick with the two of them. I think continuing to build that familiarity in terms of how we've been playing is crucial, especially if we get into this game on Wednesday. Tomorrow you give the nod for me to Auston Trusty and see what he's about. Greg Taylor I think starts tomorrow. I do. I think we'll see Baye in the second half. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Baye maybe comes on for Alistair Johnson as well, with being able to play in the right back position. I think for me, Greg Taylor, I've spoke about, he's hit the ceiling, but I actually kind of reflect on the player that we seen get run ragged in the Bodo Glimt game a few years ago. Mm-hmm.
Is Greg Taylor a better player than that?
100% he is. 100% he is. He does it at the highest level domestically, and he does it consistently. I think what Greg Taylor needs around him is good players though. Mm-hmm. And I think that there was an element of adjustment of him playing alongside Liam Scales at the beginning of last season. It just wasn't really working out for the two of them for a little bit. And also not having a consistent left winger, not having a winger like Daiza Maeda that's going to come short for you and take the ball, and Louis Palma. Palma wasn't interested in trying that at all. The two at the left-hand side of our defence have worked really, really hard on that, and you can see it. You can definitely see it. But the thing for Greg Taylor and lets him down is that sometimes I think he's found wanting, and I think that there's the domestic side of trying to bring that inverted side into play where he's trying to go forward with the ball, and he leaves it too wide open on the left-hand side. And I think Atletico Madrid exploited it a lot last season against us, and that's where Brendan Rodgers will say, you're good, but you're not that level.
I think reading between the lines, and we don't know Brendan Rodgers' innermost thoughts, and we don't know the discussions he's having with Greg Taylor, but I think that's a pretty fair assumption that Brendan Rodgers feels Greg Taylor has got us here, but we need someone else to get us there. Yeah. There being success in Europe. And I think I agree with you. It'd be more interesting if I said, Scales has got to stay and blah, blah. But I completely agree. I think Auston Trusty's got to start. Mm-hmm. I think we need to get him in. And I think Baye possibly won't start, but I think you'd maybe see him on the hour mark. Yeah. And we get a good half-hour game time with a view to him potentially then starting on Wednesday night. So let's you and I agree then. We'll definitely see Kasper Schmeichel start the game.
Yeah.
Alistair Johnson, Carter Vickers, Auston Trusty for a debut, and Greg Taylor, for now, holding on to the jersey. And in the midfield, Callum McGregor 100% stick on. He starts, and rightfully so. Newly crowned August Player of the Month, as discussed. The two other positions are now being fought out between four players. It's Rio Hatate, it's Paulo Bernardo, it's Arne Engels, your record signing, and it's Luke McCowan, a guy who I'm getting more and more excited about the more I see and hear about him. I've bought into the Luke McCowan hype. What do you think? McGregor a certainty. Who's the other two against Hearts?
Is McGregor a certainty? Is it not? Listen, I take nothing away from the start that he's had, but do you not want him fresh for such a big game? And
it's 2 weeks off.
I know, but
I think for now, I think against Hearts he has a certainty.
Fair.
But then I think we're going to face tougher tasks. In games, in Champions League games 2, 3 and 4, we face Dortmund, Atalanta and Leipzig, I think in that order.
Yeah.
If I don't know, I've not looked ahead to the domestic fixtures before then, but if you've got a domestic game that might be a wee bit easier, with all respect, maybe it's, I don't want to upset anybody, St Mirren or, I don't know, Kilmarnock, I don't know, Hearts or Murder. There might be an opportunity to say, do you know what, you don't start this game, Callum, and we bring in Paulo Bernardo and we bring in Luke McCowan. But I think for this one against Hearts, he absolutely does start. So who do you think makes up that three alongside him?
I do think we'll see McGregor. I'm just trying
Just at it.
I'm just at it with you, mate. I think we'll see McGregor. I think we'll see Engels.
From the start?
Yeah. I think he getting that experience with Belgium, then obviously missing out the second game with that crazy rule about the suspension.
Bizarre.
And then I think we'll see Paulo Bernardo based on the incredible performance against Rangers. I think he's got to start. Rio Hatate had a good game in spells 2 weeks ago, but I do think that Rodgers has always kind of looked at Hatate of like, you've still got levels to go up. And I do think that he does. I think he's an incredible player. I've said at one point I think he's the best attacking midfielder in the league. But I think he knows that too. So this competition, this challenge is only a good thing for Rio Hatate. And I can see Rodgers potentially saying, no, you're not getting the nod tomorrow, fight for your jersey. And I think Hatate would probably I think he will start on Wednesday.
I'm going to repeat the Brendan Rodgers mantra from not so long ago. You can see it quoted in various places. He was quoting it at Leicester, he's quoted it since coming back to Celtic. Competition is often the best coach. To a huge extent, he won't have to say much to those midfielders that I mentioned, because any one of them, including Callum McGregor, now knows that if you're not on it, there's a guy waiting to take your jersey. Yeah. Anybody, Rio Hatate is a hugely talented player. I'm a massive fan of Rio Hatate, but he knows that if he's not at the top of his game, he finds himself on the bench. He was very unfortunate. He went away with Japan and got 0 minutes across 2 games. I think it was China and Bahrain they played. Daiz Maeda played in the first game, but not the second game as well. It's a long way to go to sit on a bench, but that's international football. And Rio Hatate, you might have read the comments, and to an extent, I think lost in translation isn't quite the right word, but he said quite honestly and openly he feels he didn't play because of his ability. Now, I'm not sure if that's the right word to use that we would use when describing that, because there's no problem with his ability, but he was playing it, he was kind of playing it quite up front, basically saying that he doesn't feel he's good enough at this moment in time. I think he's been humble there. There's a lot of humility about, some of the Japanese players at Celtic, and that's just part of their culture. I don't think there's any problem with Rio Hatate's ability, but Brendan Rodgers called it this afternoon. There is a bit of a problem with his consistency, and that's what he needs to find. I thought he was decent against Rangers without being brilliant. But I think as a manager, Brendan Rodgers needs to be seen to be rewarding big performances, and there's absolutely no doubt that Paulo Bernardo did give him a big performance. So on that basis then, you've got McGregor, Bernardo being rewarded,
and Engels.
And you don't pay 11 million for a guy to sit on benches, do you?
No, you don't. I think get this guy in straight away, get him familiar. As you say, the Dortmund game's 2.5 weeks away?
You're going,
just under 3 weeks, heading over. And I think that this is the time now. Don't hang about and try and get these guys into the system. Let's see what they're worth. I'm
really excited to see them.
Same.
I was trying to catch some of the... So I was online last week and someone said, there's Engels coming on for Belgium. I'm like, where am I going to watch a Belgium game? Scraping about. Couldn't find it, so I've not seen any of the footage. But by all accounts, done well. Kevin De Bruyne was very complimentary to him after the game. He's 20 years of age. He then came back to Glasgow and spoke, I think it was Tuesday at Celtic Park. really balanced guy.
Yeah.
Very level-headed, feet on the ground kind of guy. But a lot of folks in some different channels I've spoke to folks in Belgium and the likes, a lot of folks are very excited about Arne Engels as a young talent, and he could be the next big thing for Celtic. And hopefully we've got him for a couple of years, and then he goes on and breaks Matt O'Reilly's record or whatever. But there's such a buzz about what he might bring here.
I'm not entirely sure who asked the question, but what about your man asking, is that a step down from the Bundesliga going to Celtic?
I don't know who asked that.
It was an English journalist, I believe, and it was along the lines of basically, is this the right move for your career? Is this the right thing to do? And he's basically says, well, they're playing Champions League football.
Yeah.
And
I don't see Augsburg in the Champions League.
No, and the day after the signing, he gets announced in the Belgium squad as well. And I'm just a bit like, we need to start kind of calling these moments out a little bit more. We need to put a bit more credit into our league. I think that our own journalists can be pretty guilty sometimes of playing our own league down. Yes, I think the authorities need to do a lot more for it in terms of our marketing skills and what we have at our disposal isn't the same as any of the top 5, of course, but we should still be looking at the models in Portugal, models in Netherlands, and looking at how big these teams are marketing themselves and being in the same way for those leagues as well. It didn't really get called out much. That's the bit that's annoyed me the most. But
do you want me to find out who it was?
I'm going to do it myself. I forgot about it until now.
I think you're right though. I think journalists, particularly if you're mainstream rather than fan media, it's your job to ask tough questions. But there's a way to ask Arne Engels if this is the right move in a positive way.
Aye.
There's ways to deliver it than saying, you're coming to this backwater, are you sure that's the right thing to do? There's ways to pitch it, and there's ways to, what's the old saying about a rising tide and all that stuff, but like everyone can live Scottish football, and if a journalist themselves is promoting the game, surely it's good for them as a journalist working in Scottish football that the game improves and all that. Anyway, separate story for separate day. Arne Engels though, for me, Paddy, he's a real departure in terms of Celtic's signing policy.
Mm-hmm.
He's like nothing we've ever signed before. We've spent 11 million on a lot of potential here. This guy is not the proven article. He came through the youth rank at Club Bruges, or Brugge, what's the right way to say it?
Go with Bruges, mate.
Potato. But he's come through that system anyway. I don't know if he featured at all in the first team, and then he's made his move to Augsburg, and by all accounts, really impressed there. So much so that he gets picked for the Belgium squad. And for Celtic to spend 11 million on a wonder kid, a guy with potential but not really there yet, I think it's a real brave move, and I think it's a really exciting move for the club to make. It's
a step in the right direction. I still kind of feel that it fits into the philosophy in terms of a younger player coming in, get 2-3 seasons out of them, nurture that talent as best as you can. We cry out for players coming through our academy, but there's also that element where we have brought younger guys in and we're going and selling them on for high fees. And I think that this, the likelihood is that if he hits the ground running and has a successful stint at Celtic, he'll break our transfer fee received after spending 11 million on him. There is an excitement about him, and I think after watching him the game against Rangers, I think the fans could see there was it just looked like a lot more athletic than some of our players.
Boy is an athlete.
I think we're buzzing to see what he can do. We're buzzing to see him settle into the team and show what he can offer. I think he's going to be a real star for us.
Boy's just in the door, and you and I have got him sold already.
I know.
A new transfer record in a couple of years' time. Hopefully we get to see lots of Arne Engels in the next couple of years and potentially beyond. But really excited to see him, whether it's from the start or off the bench tomorrow. Up top, I'll give you my 3, Paddy, and you can tell me if you think otherwise. So pleased with what Nicholas Kuhn's brought to the party. We've seen he had some talent when he arrived in January last year. He took a bit of time to show it. Fast forward to pre-season over in the States, and then the way he started this campaign, he's been exceptional. And I think it's one of those ones where there's genuine excitement when his name's on the team sheet. There's certain players you look out for, and all of a sudden he's one of the guys that fans are really keen to see it. What'll that be? 1:45 tomorrow, the lineup will get posted, and I think we're really keen that he's part of that. I think he'll start on the right hand side where he can continue that partnership with Alistair Johnson, and I think Dyson Maeda will almost certainly start on the left hand side, who's had another brilliant start to the campaign. And really the question mark is Kyogo versus Ida, and I'm not sure how he plays it this time around. I always thought Kyogo would start against Rangers, and he did, but this will be telling as to what Brendan Rodgers intends to do with these two guys. Adam Ida obviously went away with Ireland, started against England, next to no service by the way, and then he came off the bench against Greece in another 2-0 defeat for Ireland. So he's not at the best of times away, but I've got a wee feeling he might start against Hearts. So I'm going to go for Maeda, Ida, Kuhn. What do you think?
Okay, I'd give you the two wingers.
Like Meatloaf said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
2 out of 3 ain't bad. I think Kyogo's had 2 weeks in Scotland. We'll be chomping at the bit. He'll want to gun Hearts down, and I think somebody made a cheeky comparison between him and Lauren Shanklin, saying Shanklin was the best striker in Scotland. I think he'll want to put that to bed tomorrow. Give him an hour.
Who's saying these silly things?
Who knows?
Silly internet people. No, I think that's a fair shout. And you're right. The fact that he's been here, he'll be full of beans. He'll be ready to go. And maybe that's why that might be the call. It leaves a lot of quality in the bench, though. We've barely touched on Luke McCowan. I think there's an excitement about him. I think he just seems a very smart piece of business. And whether it's him or James Forrest, who's come back and shown a lot for Celtic, Baye might very well find himself on the bench. All of a sudden, Brendan Rodgers will look down at his bench and he can point towards 5, 6, maybe 7 genuine quality options which don't reduce the quality on the pitch. And I think it's really daunting for Hearts and otherwise. Let's talk about them, Paddy. They're second bottom of the table. They've got 1 point from 4 games, so 1 point out of 12. Not good going. Stephen Naismith and his backroom staff signed a new deal in January, and you see these funny quirks in football sometimes, don't you? Philippe Clement's done the same, and they're not having a great time. But the Hearts hierarchy seem to, have a lot of faith in Stephen Naismith, and I know they had the distraction of trying to qualify for Europa League stuff. They've now fallen into the conference, but dress it up however you want to. There's a really decent squad at Hearts, but they're not performing at this moment in time.
Is it a decent squad though? This is the thing. I think we've seen some of their performances against bigger teams in Scotland, and actually they've hardly laid a glove. 9 times out of 10, your team's probably up for it a lot more than what they would be against other teams. They relish a chance to play Celtic or Rangers. In the game, I think it was the semi-final they played Rangers in the Scottish Cup last year, and
pathetic.
It was such a poor performance. The fans were basically calling for Naismith to go after that, I believe. They raced away for 3rd place in the league.
I was calling for it to go after that. They offered nothing.
They raced away and got 3rd, but I think what they found last season is that those around them challenging for 3rd place were nowhere near the level. Yeah. Hence the reason you see, and no disrespect to them, St Mirren and Dundee were in the top half of the table. Hibs, Aberdeen were way underperforming last season. Whereas now there's a bit of pressure on. Aberdeen have started really well. Aberdeen are probably having a little think about 2nd this season. Naismith is backed because of the European position. The automatic group stage qualification's massive. But what they realised last season is that they don't have the team to kind of continuously go at it. They need the depth. And I just think that the players that he's brought in to try and deal with that depth, are they anywhere near the quality? We can't say he's not been backed. Mm-hmm. He has been backed, but what has he brought in?
So the 2 guys that stand out to me, and I don't know the extent of other transfer incomings, but Jan Danda, who I think is a really decent
he's a tidy player,
County, and Blair Spittle, who was at Motherwell last season, I think he's a really good player as well. They should certainly add to what they're doing. Danda doesn't seem to be starting at this moment in time. Spittle generally is. But maybe it's elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Maybe they haven't, backed McCorley in defence and otherwise, and who knows. But it's clear. So St Mirren kind of came into the same bracket. They were obviously pretty decent last season, but the European thing at the start of the campaign, it's hard for teams in Scotland to juggle that, where they're trying to rest players for a really tough game on a Tuesday or a Thursday and play again on a Sunday. And Celtic can handle it. Celtic have got the squad and the capacity to get by. I think it's much more of a challenge for almost everybody else, including Rangers, to balance those teams out.
It's their biggest games of the season because of the financial implications in it. It can mean so much to these teams and what it can bring in. So that they're putting everything into it. What I have to say, and what I really appreciate, is actually Hearts, Kilmarnock and St Mirren all made a real go for it in terms of their qualification games this year. Mm-hmm. And it was refreshing from what you've seen in previous years. In terms of teams trying to get into their group stages. Yeah. There needs to be more of that in Scottish football because there's not a lot of money coming into the league.
Mm-hmm. Do you know, I really, really wanted to see the teams do well, and I watched most of those games in the close season as St Mirren, Hearts and Kilmarnock were trying to kind of make ways in Europe, and every one of them apart from Hearts I wanted to see do well. No, genuinely I was...
Hearts should have beat that Pleasant mob though, away from home.
I've not got any great feelings for Hearts, but generally I wanted the Scottish teams to do well. It's good for everybody, as I say, for the most part. But they're struggling to juggle things around. And from Stephen Naismith's point of view, how do you come to Celtic Park and address that? What do you do? So you're joint bottom, right? Kilmarnock have got a point after 4 games. Hearts are the same. Then you've got Ross County and Hibs both stuck on 2 points, which is pretty poor as well. You're not expected to get into the Celtic Park. And actually, I don't think Stephen Naismith's job's under pressure today, Friday. If you get beat 7-0, which is possible, you're under real pressure. If you come away from Celtic Park at 2-0, you're fine. You live to see another day. How does he approach it? Does he just go back to basics?
He'll find a way to motivate his players for this game tomorrow.
But does he park the bus? Does he go 2 banks of
probably
5, something like that?
I think, after getting a point against Rangers, he'll happily look to get a point against us tomorrow. I'm pretty sure we'll see some tactics getting employed to slow the game down a little bit.
Some hammer throwing.
And that's why we need to be a wee bit cautious in terms of, we want to keep players fresh for Wednesday night as well. Easy to say as a supporter, you need to play what's in front of you and go game by game, absolutely. But I think we do need to be cautious of that, especially if we go and take an early 2-3 goal lead, like we have been doing in the first half this bit of the season. Making sure that you're protecting your players that are going to be starting on Wednesday. I
think one of the safest bets to make them a bet responsibly and all that, Celtic to be 2 goals to the good by half time at least. It would just follow the pattern. We've been starting well, we've been showing real pace and real intensity. Celtic have been getting the crowd on side by scoring early. I can't see anything but Celtic going a couple of goals to good, and I don't think we get too carried away at different times. No. You kind of try and offer that balance, and even like I said before, Rangers, I predicted 2-0. I thought we'd be comfy but not flying away with it, and so it proved to be the case. And I think Celtic could do what they've done, take an early lead, but I think we could, I'm just contradicting myself, I think we could then go and take a few off a Hearts side which are really low in confidence. Yeah. On that, Paddy, then let me put you in the spot for your scoreline prediction.
I'm going to go 4-0 tomorrow. I think, we've just been playing some really good football. I do think that the changes, whether it's 3, 4 or 5 changes, I think majority will happen in the hour mark, and then followed up by maybe 1 or 2 before the 70th minute mark tomorrow, if we've got that healthy lead, just to make sure that this team's fit and ready to go for Wednesday night, because I do think we go for it on Wednesday. I think it will be very similar tactics that we employ in the league as well. We'll be looking to really take the game to Slovan, but I think tomorrow against Hearts, get the job done and start thinking about Wednesday.
Imagine you're the Hearts backline and Kyogo's just run you ragged for an hour, and then they throw an Adamida to batter you about.
I know.
And then Paulo Bernardo's been duking in and about you, and they say, we'll just bring on 11 million Arne Engels or Rio Hitati or Luke McCowan. It's tough. Listen, I'm not feeling sorry for these teams, but it is so tough to come up against Celtic this moment in time, and the strength of Celtic in comparison to everybody in the league. I'm not sure the gap's ever been bigger.
No, I think this is where we're kind of been different from last season as well. One of the things that as Celtic fans last year you were watching is tapping the ball around the box and being very comfortable in possession but with no end product. I think now, as I say, I do feel that the 2 attacking midfielders, attack-minded midfielders of the 3 are really, really bringing defenders back into their own box, creating that big space in front of the box a lot more, and that's, as I say, it's perfect territory for Callum McGregor. We're a lot more convincing around that area, and that's the difference for us this season, because we speak about some of the games we watched under Ange. We even remember the first spell of Brendan Rodgers. There came points where we were just recycling it left to right and not really getting in behind.
The horseshoe of death.
This team's doing it. This team is doing it, and they're doing it very comfortably.
And it's reflected in the fact that Kyogo's goal against Rangers there was the first goal by a Celtic striker in the 5 games this season. We've scored 15 goals, 1 by a striker, so between him and Ida. And actually what you're seeing all of a sudden is more goals from midfield. Callum McGregor's own stats reflect that, 3 goals in the 4 games. And it's because exactly that, the 3 forwards are doing their job and the midfielders are flooding forward and finding that space in and around the edge of the box.
How many seasons have we scored so many goals? I can't remember the last time we've scored, 4 or 5 goals from outside the box as well. Think about that. That's not always a given for Celtic in a season.
And it's clearly by design. It's not just something that's happened by chance.
It's creating that space.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to see, and it's just another indicator that these players are absolutely buying into what the manager wants them to do, and you're about to slot in 4 or 5 more quality additions given the way that we finished the transfer window. It's really exciting to see, Paddy. So as I say, lots to look forward to. Back at Celtic Park, finished with international stuff for another 6 games or so.
Thank God.
The buzz of Slovan being around the corner on Wednesday night. So your final thoughts ahead of this one, Paddy?
Yeah, just as you say, Tino, just a buzz about getting back to Celtic Park tomorrow. I think hopefully getting a closer look at some of our new players. That excitement you get after a transfer window is always brilliant. And then just thinking, let's go and lay a bit of a marker down again in the league. We could, take an 8-point lead tomorrow, depending on how Aberdeen do. And, we could then begin into a game on Wednesday night full of confidence and just, playing at a really, really good tempo. Let's see how it transfers into Europe as well.
Yeah, loads to look forward to. So 4-0 for Paddy. I'm going to go for 5-0. But another exciting day in store at Celtic Park. Thanks to Paddy for joining me for this one. Thanks as always to everyone that continues to tune in. We'll be back, all going well. We've got some logistics to play about with, but all going well. We'll be back on Sunday with the Final Whistle show. But in the meantime, enjoy the game. We'll catch you all again soon.